I think we have an audience on the internet too, so we should start, even though all people in the audience hasn't really yet arrived, but I don't care. We start, and I suggest that Professor Michael Geistlinger start with his ideas about how to get rid of Euratom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't want to repeat what I said in my presentation, but if we consider the topic, what future for EU treaty change in the energy field and how should it be, I think the main question is whether to talk on energy in the framework of the EU treaty or whether to do it outside. And I already in 2019 warned Plage and Noah from mixing energy, in particular nuclear energy, with general matters related to EU treaty reform. We saw from the recent visits of the German Federal Chancellor Scholz that the big states in the European Union have, for example, an exorbitant interest to end up at the principle of unanimity to get rid of this principle in the field of common foreign policy. From the perspective of small states, you can imagine that they are heavily against. And if energy will become a ball in this field, and then you can imagine that which item will be sacrificed. I'm sure it will be energy. And therefore, I consider that one needs to be aware of the fact that without touching Euratom and the nuclear energy, all ideas with regard to changes in the field of energy will fail. There will be no real disclosure of the costs, no real competitiveness on the market. There will be a secret game with regard to the final storage, and with regard to the risks, with regard to safety and security, and this will continue. So with regard to energy, I therefore uphold my proposal to make a strong point for a start and for building up a respective negotiational power. And the negotiational power with the European Commission you get if you say, I leave Euratom. And then I will see how they react. This is how I would like to advise politicians to start a fundamental reform of the energy sector in the European Union. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a distant friend on the net, Michel Rivasi. I would suggest do you hear me, Michel? I don't hear you. Somebody, please, do you hear her? No.
Yes, yes, I see you.
Okay, so can you give the next comment, Michel?
Yeah, thank you very much to organize this. Thank you very much. You understand me?
No.
Do you hear me?
Louder, you must.
Ah. Do you see me? Ah, why?
Yeah. Okay. We will solve that problem instantly.
You have problem? Attends. Why?
Michel, il faut ouvrir ton micro.
Perfect. Go on.
Ask to unmute.
Yeah, we hear you now.
Voilà.
Yes?
Yes.
Ah, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much to organize this meeting, because it's Euratom, it's a very big problem. And for me, it's obsolete, anti-democratic, and biased treaty. So it's very hard to convince the European Parliament and the member state also to change this treaty. When you see the history at the beginning of European Commission and so on, you have coal and steel community. And this coal and steel community, which was created for 50 years, and it's all. But the time limit was set for the European Atomic Energy Community. It's always, now, always it exists. This treaty is still considered a separate legal personality from the rest of the European Union and has remained virtually unchanged since it was signed by the 6 founding countries in 1957. And the European Commission recognizes that there is a need to talk about recast of European, but gives an inadequate solution. To create a high-level group of experts to deliver this recommendation to modify Euratom after 2025. We are going to remain in the dark. It is up to the member state and the European Parliament to deal with this issue. The European Commission cannot deal with the issue alone, and we need to debate together on the future of nuclear power. In the European Parliament, together with my German colleague Daniel Freund, co-rapporteur for the Green Group of an AFCO report on treaty change, we are asking for the Euratom Treaty to be reformed and integrated into the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. And I will explain why. The treaty is written if the world society is focused on nuclear power, or yet many member states have no nuclear power or are phasing it out. On the 27 member states, 13 countries do not have nuclear power plants now. Austria, Cyprus, Denmark, Estonia, Greece, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, Poland, and Portugal. In addition, Spain, Germany, and Belgium, two co-sponsors of the treaty, have decided to phase it out. De facto, the 1957 consensus on nuclear energy no longer exists between member states. Moreover, this treaty is not transparent at all. Many mandates are given to the European Commission, and a separate Euratom administration has been created. As for the European Parliament, it's only invited to give its opinion and no more on one of the 10 chapters of the treaty, the European Framework Programme. But it is the same consultation, and the Council is not obliged to follow up the opinion of the European Parliament. It's essential that the co-decision procedure be extended to nuclear issue. It's very abnormal, this position now. At the international level, nuclear energy is also a separate issue. The IAEA depends on the Security Council, which is essentially run by the 5 nuclear states that have the right of veto, whereas the other UN organizations depend on the Economic and Social Council. Euratom is not a question of civilian use, but a question of military use. France is in a special position. defending a bankrupt industry like EDF, and hoping for Euratom subsidies and the sale of nuclear power plants to delay the crash. France has not prepared a meaningful and effective energy transition, and it's completely behind other European countries to categorize nuclear as a green investment. Think about taxonomy. It's time the Open Treaty and its preferential treatment of nuclear power to be abolished, and key principles must be secured within the framework of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. Protection of the environment and people, improvement of common safety standards for nuclear power plants, liability of plant operators for the decommissioning of reactors and the storage of nuclear waste, common rules on liability for nuclear accidents, and democratization through the full involvement of the European Parliament nuclear legislation. The EU should still retain responsibility for ensuring that basic standards for the protection of the health and safety of workers and the general public are applied. This does not need to be undertaken solely in the context of nuclear issue, but this issue needs to comply with European health and environment protection legislation and thus incorporate the Lisbon Treaty. In the field of radiation protection, it's essential to be vigilant. The first and foremost objective of the Euratom Treaty is to promote the development of nuclear industry, which easily conflict with the establishment of acceptable contamination limit. And if you see this limit is very high, there are too many health scandals today for us to turn a blind eye. We are fighting to ensure that scientific expertise serves the public interest. The role of European Treaty must be part of the discussion on European energy policy. The Energy Union needs an energy strategy focused on the development of energy efficiency and renewable energy rather than special favor for a discredited energy sector.
You have nuclear 1 minute left.
Yeah, I have finished. For me, nuclear power has no future. Every euro invested in nuclear power makes the climate crisis worse. Nuclear power is simply excluded because it's the most expensive form of electricity generation today, but above all, because it takes a long time to build a reactor. So we are now in COP27, and it's very important to explain to the people that the nuclear are a position very particularly. The European Parliament has not involved in the decision of European Treaty, and it's anti-democratic at all.
Okay,
it's why
thank
I
you.
want to share with you. Then
I will leave to the other panelists, and I will go in from left to right physically, and then our Danish friend Søren will have the next word.
Thank you. I'm from the left wing, the Red Green Alliance in Denmark, and I'm a spokesman on energy and utilities and housing and agriculture as well, for the Red Green Alliance in Denmark. We just have an election in Denmark, and normally we are discussing a lot of energy policy, and that's fair enough. But this time we had also a discussion about nuclear power in Denmark, because there are two small liberal parties in Denmark they're prepared to be voting for nuclear power in Denmark. And it had really been a weird fight in this election, because there's so many young people that think it could be a good idea. And maybe they're thinking about the climate crisis and they should do something quickly. But the point is, we can't do this quickly if it's with nuclear power. In Denmark, it would at least take 15 years to make it, maybe 20 years. And how about the price for the electricity? If you look at Hinkley Point in England, they are supported with an electricity price for 35 years on a price that is 0.77 Danish crown a kilowatt hour. In Denmark, we had a period from 2010 to 2015 where the price for a kilowatt hour was going down from 0.5 to 0.2 kroner a kilowatt hour. And now we are planning the windmill in the sea, where the Danish state are going to earn money to give the permission to put up windmills in the sea. Why should we take nuclear power station to Denmark? That is too crazy. But there are politicians that are talking about that. I think it's really weird. But we have to take the discussion with the voters and with the young people. We have to do it. But in Denmark, we don't need nuclear power. We are so close to develop an energy system on renewable energy. In few years, a lot faster than we can build a nuclear power plant, we can reach it without nuclear energy. In the parliament, we have discussing this Euratom treaty, and I would be glad to leave Euratom together with Austria, if that's possible. If you can do all the writing about it, I'm prepared to vote for it. We have already had the discussion in Denmark, and we ended up with that the whole parliament together had 3 points that we should work for, and I will bring it up again when we have a new government and have an energy minister, because I think it's fair that we are still supporting decommissioning of the old power plants in East Europe. That is what we have said we should support, and that might be 100 million crowns a year, and then there's 100 million crowns left that we at the moment are supporting the nuclear power industry in Europe, and we don't want to do that. I've been talking today about we should have something renewable treaty, and I'm not sure that is necessary. It's more necessary that every country in Europe, in the European market, should take decisions to develop the renewable energy to be self-sufficient. And then we have the European energy market, so we can sell energy to each other. Do we need more? I'm not sure.
Thank you. And then there are 3 other panelists, and according to time, 5 minutes each. Yes, Dörte, it's your turn.
Okay. Yeah, then I can add. I can take on what Søren just said. I also think when we take out Euratom, we only have renewables and efficiency left. So maybe I really thank you for the call to just attack Euratom, to attack the validity, and also that this morning that you, or this morning, the analysis, or this lunchtime from Plage is bringing together that Hinkley Point decision by the European Court was for me the finale of a point of no return. Because if then we have now a judgment of the European Court saying that it's a legitimate reasoning for subsidies to new nuclear is that the Euratom Treaty gives a common interest, because it's signatory of all European member states, then it becomes a vicious circle. I remember when Austria joined, I was still a civil servant in Hamburg, but in the Brussels office of the two northern German states. And we had discussions on the working level. Why the hell are you joining Euratom? And then the governmental people said, well, you know, and I quote, for us, this Euratom is dead under the carpet. But if the Commission wants us to join, we're happy to. It has no effect. It was quite wrong to do that. But because at that time, it was still before, it was just after, I think, the single treaty, bringing together the institutions. And then all the time, the nuclear lobby interest, and that is in itself, I think, a planet apart, no longer connected apparently to the utilities who want to get rid of it. They dig in their heels wherever they can to maintain a power on a very strange ground. It's a bit like the Kaiser's neue Kleider, the Emperor's new clothes being in Denmark. Quote that today. So I think I thank you for the wake-up call in your speech. And when I then thought, wait a minute, in 2003 I've written that. So we have to think about the Vienna Convention, and there comes to my mind the one thing, which is you have to do your utmost to try to reform before you leave. So yes, we can say it has been tried and tried and tried in Lisbon, Maastricht, whatever. And then you can say we are at the point of last resort. And for us, the basic, so the common contractual base, the Gemeinschaftsgrundlage, why we did it in 57 has changed. In 57, we had no renewables. In 57, we had another problem to have fair access to sources of energy. And in 57, I would say there were already probably critical voices, including Einstein before, but in 57, many people thought it will be too cheap to meter. And you showed it in one of your hopeful slides, when you see the publicity, there will be cars run on nuclear and whatever. But this has changed completely with the new kid on the block, which is no longer a kid. Because if you take out the subsidies which have been given to nuclear industry and to fossil industry in general, it's absurdly much higher than renewables ever got. But in the public opinion building, it's always renewables, all the feed-in mechanism, all the quota, it's all too expensive. They suck us out. But they don't see that we are, as you showed on your table, we are sucked out.
1 minute.
Yeah, nee, ich höre jetzt auf. It's fine.
Okay, let's listen to Julia.
Okay, thank you. So Dörte, I think we have reached the point of last resort already, because the dinosaur is 65 years old. So, you know, to us, there is no justification whatsoever for the European Union to maintain a special economic, legal, and political zone for the nuclear industry only. Well, of course, as we've seen, you know, the European Commission is the custodian of the European treaties. So it represents Euratom and the other treaties. And at the end of today, I wonder, isn't it very burdensome to the European Commission? I mean, they must be totally split apart and torn apart. Because on the one hand, for instance, we have Article 194 of the TFEU saying, sorry, I want to quote it, the promotion of renewable forms of energy is one of the primary goals of the European Union energy policy. And on the other hand, at the same time, they need to promote the nuclear industry. That's a huge conflict. How are they coping? it must be in the interest of the European Commission to get rid of the conflict of interest, right? So for us NGOs, it's always the question of how we put enough pressure on our governments and how we can scandalize the issue. So, like, how can we inform the public to put pressure on the governments? So what I think today is, like, the Austrian government has tried a lot, and we really applaud them for that, to reform Euratom or to get rid of the Dino entirely. But what we would need is help from other governments. And as far as I understand, the Danish parliament has issued a resolution against or for the reform of Euratom. So it would help a lot if the Danish civil society and also members of parliament ask their government to join Austria in its fight. And we really appreciate that Luxembourg joins our side. But I think that's the best way, you know. We need a coalition of member states, and then we are on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you. And then you are the last one, and then there are a couple of minutes for comments.
Thank you. I just want to pick up a slogan that is not out of the industry. It's system change, not climate change. And I was reminded of this slogan when one of the people from the Commission asked me about my draft for an energy transition treaty. And he said, what is in your treaty that we could not put into a directive? And as you know, they came up with a renewable energy directive. And I think there is a fundamental misunderstanding. You can, of course, come up with targets in a directive. You can, of course, come up with measures, but you cannot implement the whole system. And you need to have a system if you fight the system. If you fight Euratom, you have to have a system that takes the stand. And I think that was not understood from the beginning, and it has not been understood up to now when you had this battle about taxonomy. Not even then the situation was brought up that you said we need a fair playing field. So I think if you want to fight the system, you have to come up with an opposing system. And if you want system change, you have to change the systems from within. I like the idea of Michael Geistlinger to attack Euratom, or to infiltrate Euratom, or to put the Trojan horse into Euratom. I mean, this is being done by Euratom also. Taxonomy is kind of a Trojan horse, where they came up and said, now we want to be part of that too. We are green too. So I think you really have to go beyond setting targets, go beyond simply implementing measures, but you have to come up with a strong institutionalized solution. Remember what I said about Africa. Who is going to negotiate with Africa? The politicians running there without coordination and speaking to state leaders there. Why not have a strong European institution speaking up for the renewables, where you can be sure what their agenda is? When I see European politicians travel to Africa, I do not know what their agenda is, and there might be points on the agenda I do not like at all. What I would like to see is a strong EU representative going there with the agenda of renewable energy only. Renewable energy only. And therefore you need to have a system in place. And this is not something that you can waive right now, because you can say there are more urgent problems, because you need these structures in the long run. And as Michael Geistlinger said, when Putin says your Ukraine problem will not go away tomorrow, prepare yourself for a decade. Now structures are needed to survive a decade, so we need the system implemented right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So before I leave the panel to give some final comments, I will say that there will be a documentation. I hope that will be available on NOAA's homepage. What do you think, Niels Henrik? That's, yes, good. And then the second thing is that we should write a press release from this seminar, and I'll ask Nils Henrik to make a draft, and I'll ask him to send this draft to all the panelists and hopefully to me. And then it's not urgent, but anyway, I hope it will show up within this month or so. That I will promise to publish that press release on our homepage from SERO. So that's what I was going to say. So then, final comment. Yes.
I would like to repeat in public what I did without micro.
Yes.
I'm ready to support the Member of Parliament, Søren, in all his efforts. I do it free of charge, so it will not cost anything to do the whole documentary work which is necessary, and write the respective, make the paperwork. So that this goes through. And I also agree with this idea that, of course, if the member states on their own manage to move to renewable energies, that's the best way. And it creates a real competitive pressure on the whole community. And then indeed, to say Euratom will be killed, and the member states on their own create the fundaments for a new renewable energy market. That's, of course, the best idea.
Thank you. I will say there will be 1 minute each for the next comments. And Michelle, do you hear me? Or are you gone? Seems to be gone. So Søren, you have 2 minutes instead.
Thank you. I have never been together with so many doctors at the same time, and friendly doctors. And I think it's really great that all this paperwork that is necessary to leave the Eurotron, that we have some help for that project. I look forward to that, and I think it's really great if there's some draft with all the comments that have been given today, so we can bring that on and use it in the parliament in Denmark. I would like to do that work. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And then Dörte, actually I already had my conclusion, so you can go on for 2 minutes each.
Yeah, so first of all, I think we all join your club to help you. No question. I come back to the system. I think what Wilhelm says is also convincing, not so much for the member states, but I think to rehabilitate and to reform the European Commission. Because if we take out Euratom alone, which could be possible, we face a commission where more than 50% have lost their raison d'être. And that's psychological, and they see then member states rushing off even more, even Poland or whatever will do more renewables because it's the cheapest thing on the block. So I think for the sake of continuing having a unified Europe, your system approach is maybe necessary, not so much for the technology it's rolled out, but for giving a sense to the Director General of Energy in the Union, because I can tell you there will be a brainwashing ceremony necessary in a way, or an education, because that's where was the money in the Commission. It was always in the Euratom pocket. And there's one thing you said, the taxonomy. They go further. There's a German saying, ist dein Ruf erst ruiniert, so lebt es sich ganz ungeniert. So if your reputation's in shambles, you can freely do whatever you want. At the moment, there are amendments on the table to change the definition or the objective, what is renewable energy, and to include fossil gas and nuclear. And they have precedents, because we had in the first renewable energy directive, we had torf, peat. Ireland was insisting that peat was a renewable source. And Germany, in order to get the trade unions, had to say that gas in the mines underground gas is a renewable source. But now they try it with nuclear.
Okay, so thank you for that. And Julia, we really want to listen to you.
Well, thank you. I think I've said enough today already. But I want to thank the online audience that has that has joined us over the last hours. And I wonder if there is any questions coming from the online audience.
I'm afraid we have not time, but
well, I'm devoting my time.
You will, okay, will be, let's. No. So, okay, so then it remains Dr. Wilhelm Bergthaler, and then we will let the audience put the question if there is any.
Yeah, just some final words. Let me speak again as a corporate lawyer. I think it was Bill Clinton who said it's the economy, stupid. And I encourage everybody to talk about the real costs of nuclear energy, talk about the costs and the burden of costs for the next generation, and do not stop to talk about that. We have seen so many times in recent years that consumer and consumer discontent can bring companies and systems down. So if there is a broad understanding that this is not responsible, actually consumer behavior can bring companies and systems down. So as long as there is no systematic reaction on the EU level, it has to come bottom up. And we have seen how strong the new generation is with regard to consumer behavior. So I look forward to rough times for the nuclear industry. It may have been a Pyrrhic victory to greenwash themselves.
Okay, so then we can let in the internet audience. If there's a question from them, you are welcome. 4 minutes, 3 minutes. Well, there are people around here. Okay, you are first, and then you are number 2.
This watermill, where do you intend to build them? In the water or on the ground? The watermill park.
You mean hydropower?
Yeah, I think it was, I don't remember your name.
It was the windmills.
Yeah, there was, sorry, a windmill park.
Well,
yeah.
We have lots of seas around Denmark, and we have plans to do it.
Okay.
So, and we're looking forward that we're going to export electricity from Denmark.
Okay.
Yes.
And I also think about the environment and the ground and the water flow. And is it okay to build it for the fish and the plants and stuff like that? Are you building maybe environment for the fish and stuff like that too, to be a part of the elements? Yeah, that was the question.
Søren, can you answer that?
Yeah, of course we are taking care of the environment and are searching for what there could be some negative effects on fishing and birds and so on, and that's going to be planned if there are some places that are better than other places.
Okay, so the last word we will hear from you.
Yes, my name is Carl Fuchs. I'm a former Green advisor here in the parliament for one of the parties. I think one of the ways to fight Euratom could also be to show or make some energy scenarios for individual countries or for Europe in whole, where we show that it's not necessary atomic power, and then make a campaign to convince the people that atomic power is unnecessary. I don't know if any had made so scenarios, but I haven't seen them. But that would be a good way.
Okay, is there any comment to his? Yes, Julia?
Well, you know, I think the best counterbalance to the nuclear industry lobbyists is the World Nuclear Industry Status Report, which was just released, I think, last month. So normally it really gives the evidence-based picture of the status of the nuclear industry. And what we have now at the moment is like the nuclear industry contributes less than 10% to the worldwide energy production. So what we really want to emphasize here, that nuclear energy is a very exclusive project of only a few states. And in my point of view, but it has also been proven by the University of Sussex in 2017, normally the civil use of nuclear energy is closely connected to a military use. And that's the origin of the civil use, right? So we always have the dual usage, that's the military and the civil use, which are closely linked up. Yeah.
Thank you. So it's my main responsibility to end this seminar at 17:00, and so it's now. So the rest of the discussions you can do on the floor or somewhere, but this seminar is ended at the time that it should be.